Hey guys, welcome to the Touchdown Table. I'm Ryan, that's Tyler, that's Jordan. We've got an interesting college football topic for you guys today. And it's, a team that's really been the talk of a lot of discussion, some controversy. And it is, of course, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the 5-0 Ohio State Buckeyes, Big Ten East champions. But the question is, do they deserve to be ranked where they are? Did the Big Ten make the right decision in making an exception to the 6-game rule to be eligible for the championship? There's really a lot of sides to this whole Ohio State thing in a year that truly is like no other in college football and in the world in general. So we're gonna have a discussion about how good we think they are, and do we think they have a shot at the playoffs, even if they're only a 6-0 Big Ten champ.
Yeah, and it's something that not only the committee argues about, but the three of us argue about. It's mainly Ryan who thinks that right now they should not be at 4. They should be. Actually, you have them at 6, don't you?
That's correct.
He has them at 6. I think me and Tyler both have them at 4 and in the playoffs right now. So controversy at the table with that for sure. But there are a lot of reasons for both sides. And as Ryan said, it's a very weird season, something we've never seen before. It's going to be a season that I hope is never replicated again in the way that it has gone. But the Ohio State Buckeyes, they've kind of got the butt end of the stick with this COVID stuff. They've had a lot of games canceled due to stuff at their school and stuff. I think there's some stuff at other schools too. But
Oh yeah.
so it's not been good for them. But we know this team is good. They were good last year. It's just tough because when a team is only playing 6 games in the season, it's hard to evaluate them. We know that this team is good, but hey, if another team goes and wins games in the season, maybe let's say some team trying to get in, like Texas A&M, let's say they were 6-0, or Florida, would you put them in there? That's just a really good discussion. I think you have to look back to last year and base it off of that. We know this team is good, as I've continuously said, but there's also the argument, okay, we know this team is good, but they haven't been able to prove it this year. Teams that have been able to prove it, A&M, Florida, if they beat Alabama, then that will definitely be something to prove. We'll see that in the future. A lot of different scenarios that can play out, and it's going to be interesting to see where Ohio State falls in the end.
It will be interesting because, as you mentioned, this team has the talent. It's just we can't see much of it because of the unfortunate things that have happened, as Jordan mentioned before, all the game cancellations, including this weekend against Michigan. If you're talking to me, as Jordan mentioned about myself earlier, saying I still think this team is a playoff team just because of what we've seen from Ohio State. It's been good. They beat Indiana probably by less than they should have, a lot of people thought, but Indiana's a good team. I have them ranked at 7 still right now. So I think that was a good win. I just don't know if we get to the end of the season and let's say maybe just one more game for Ohio State gets canceled. Is 5 wins enough to get to the playoffs? I personally don't think so, even though I would think that Ohio State is a better team than A&M and Florida, but you can't put an 11 or whatever 10 win team against a 5-win team in the playoffs because they had less games. I mean, it's all so confusing, and everything in 2020 has been weird. This is no exception.
Yeah, and like you said, you think. I think that they're a top 4 team too. I think talent wise, but we can't make these rankings, and soon enough the committee won't be able to make these rankings off of what they think. What happens on the field. Some teams are going to get better draws than others. COVID doesn't have a favorite team. No one's free from it. Some teams have gotten lucky and played virtually their whole schedule uninterrupted. So there's been teams like Ohio State that have had some problems with it. And I don't think it's the players' fault. I mean, like I said, this virus is, you can take precautions, you can be smart, but still, it finds a way, and it's unfortunate. But I think when you look at Ohio State, it's just they they just have such a limited sample size compared to some of these other teams. And I think if you're Ohio State, at least the encouraging part is that the committee still ranked you at number 4 ahead of some teams that have played more games than you, won more games than you, have a more impressive win than you. I don't agree with the committee's decision, but the fact that the committee did that and ranked you at 4 when you have played that much less games, I think it's, at least an encouraging sign to say, okay, they're not just completely writing us off. And, I have my thoughts on it, but I'll get into that later. But I'll let you guys kind of talk about the rest of the outlook.
Yeah, and I understand the viewpoint of it's so hard to let a 6-0 possibly team make the playoffs, but the thing is you have to watch the film on this team. And when you turn on the film, you might go to the Indiana game and you say, you know what, that was their worst game this season.
That's Justin Fields' worst game.
That's Justin Fields'
his college career.
Yeah.
And they still won the game.
They still won the game. He threw 3 picks in that game, I think,
I
right?
think it was. And he was under pressure a lot.
Yeah, after he had not thrown any picks thus far this season, I should say. So if you turn that on, you might get a little bit skeptical. Then you turn on the other games. They ripped apart Michigan State this year, along with many other teams. If they were able to play teams like Michigan this week or other teams on their schedule, like Wisconsin, I think got canceled too, right? Was that one? I don't know.
Wisconsin's got a lot of games
Yeah,
canceled.
Wisconsin.
But
I don't think
actually,
they were
it
supposed
was.
to play.
Well, whatever teams in the Big Ten they were supposed to play that got canceled, I don't think there's much argument that you could say they would have played bad in those games. We know they would have ripped on Michigan. The really only game that on the schedule this year, based on how the Big Ten is playing, that we wanted to see Ohio State play was Indiana, because Indiana is a ranked team. A lot of people still think they should be inside the top 10. Tyler said he has them at what, 8 you said?
7.
7 he
Are
said.
you
So
really? That's not what you told me. Or did you?
I thought I put him at 7, right?
I thought it was,
Or was it
8.
8?
I'll,
thought it was
I'll
8.
double check.
Well, either way, there's a lot of people who still think that Indiana team is darn good, and you know what? They are darn good. They lost their quarterback, Michael Penix, but that defense is really good. And their backup quarterback stepped up against Wisconsin. They got a big win against another ranked Wisconsin team, although questionable whether are they still ranked?
No.
They're not still ranked. So, but they were ranked when they played. So, you know, you have to take a look at that game. You know that Indiana is good. The committee has them ranked decently high. There's a lot of people who think they should be ranked higher. And if you win against a team that's ranked that high, I don't see the problem with that. I know that it was not a smooth game. It was not their best game. And that's the thing. It was not their best game, and they still won it. In fact, I think they controlled that game until that fourth quarter. Then things started to get a little bit closer. But even with the picks in the first quarter, it still seemed like Justin Fields and that Ohio State offense and even that defense had this game rolling in the right direction. Then things went a bit haywire, but they were able to hang on in the end. And remember, Ohio State last year, they were just one play away from going to the national championship and playing the LSU Tigers. Of course, that play with Chris Olave and Justin Fields, the miscommunication kind of tarnished that going on. Tyler's doing it over there, what Justin Fields did. But remember, they were so good last year. This team has not changed too much. Sure, they've lost J.K. Dobbins. They've lost one of the best players we've seen in a long time in Chase Young, but they're still a very darn good team. And they still do have a pretty good defense as well. So I don't really see why you would want to put and then down anymore. And the one more thing I want to say is that the committee has them ranked at 4. And as Ryan said, if you're an Ohio State fan, you are so happy to see that right now, because I truly believe that how the committee is going to rank in the future, just the way they're ranking stuff, they're being very conservative this year. We saw with BYU, very conservative on that one. They didn't want to rank them any higher than they should have been, so they put them down low. I think they're going to be conservative with Ohio State. They're not going to freak out that they're not playing games, because they know that this is a good team. I think that because of that, because of the conservativeness year, in this crazy year, I think that they are going to stay at 4.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned a couple things throughout the speech you were given there. It seemed like it went on for a bit, but that's all right. You were talking about how, last year they were good last year. I think that's taken into account if you're the committee, but this is a whole new year. Like you said, they've lost a couple players.
They're good this year,
And
though.
I think they are good, and I'm going to get to that in a second, and I agree with you. I'm just saying there are reasons for doubt, and once again, you just don't know, like, what would happen if they played 10 or 11 games like a Notre Dame or a Clemson have at this point. I mean, you would think they would be 10-0 still, or 11-0, or maybe, I don't know, maybe drop a game at
I
one
can
point.
say with confidence, I don't think they would lose to any of those Big Ten teams right now.
Yeah,
if
but
they
I
would have
mean,
had to play.
At this point, is thinking, like,
Do they have
you think
Northwestern
they're
on the
okay?
schedule?
Is that good enough
Big
to
Ten
put them?
championship.
Yeah.
Like, if you think Ohio State is a playoff team, does that mean you could put them in there if they haven't had a chance to prove it? I don't know, and that's why, here's what I wanted to say. I think this is where the eye test comes into play, because the eye test is more important this year
Yes.
than I think it's ever been in the history of the college football playoffs. Granted, it's only been like 8 years. But you have to pay attention and watch these games. This committee has to be paying attention to every single play that goes on and watching to see, not just the score of the games, but how the teams look, because it's going to be close between even a team like Ohio State and A&M because of the game differential that they've played. So you got to be paying attention to every game, watching every detail, and giving your own opinion based on what you see, not based on what you think or remember from last year.
Yeah.
Well, what we see from this Ohio State team, sorry to cut you off,
No,
I'll be quick, but what we see from this Ohio State team is Justin Fields at quarterback, who is bound to go very quickly in this upcoming draft as long as he declares, which we all assume that he will. Also, Garrett Wilson, who's a sophomore, he's having himself a great year. Chris Olave, who I mentioned earlier, in a negative context. In a positive context, he's having a good year, and so I really like to see that. Then the freshman Jackson Smith Njigba, he's doing really good this year. He's been a
That big
standout
catch week
player.
one.
Was that the drag one?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah,
Against Nebraska.
yeah, that was very good play. So a lot of wide receivers stepping up. We know Justin Fields, and also the running back committee. We know J.K. Dobbins is gone, but they have really not lost too much of a beat at running back. They have Master Teague listed number 1 on the depth chart, but also Trey Sermon gets in there and does some really good stuff as well. Talk about the defense, headlined by junior Sean Wade playing the cornerback position, some other guys as well. I need to study that defense a little bit more, so I'm not just going to start naming names off that I don't know too much. But those are all really household names. If you're a college football fan, you know all those names because they've done some good stuff this year, not just last year, but this year they have done some good things, and I don't think you could look past that.
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple more things. Number one, I mean, I obviously, it's so tough to, play a football season and, navigate all the obstacles of 2020. But I really think the Big Ten kind of dropped the ball because they set their teams up to be in situations like this. They created a schedule with no wiggle room whatsoever. You look at what the conferences like the SEC did. They started earlier, and they gave themselves a window where you didn't have to postpone games.
Well, they wasn't even play.
They were well, yeah, no, I know, and I'm glad that everyone was playing. But I mean, the Big Ten dropped the ball. They gave their teams no wiggle room. How do you realistically expect that to work when you have no wiggle room? You say, oh yeah, 8-game schedule, a lot better than 6 games, but all of a sudden, cancel a few games. You're playing 5-6 games. Like what Kevin Warren, the commissioner, and that the Big Ten leadership group should have done. They should have given themselves, an extra bye week, some more spare time. Spread this out because you could not legitimately expect, oh, yep, this is all going to go fine.
They had time too. Like they could have started the season quicker.
They could have.
I think they knew this was going to end up happening, but
then prevent it because now you have a situation like this where your best team in the conference, the one that gets you all the big bucks, might miss out on the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I don't know what they were thinking when they did this, but I just think they were just trying to say, people want football to happen, fine, take it, and this is what we're giving you, without really coming up with a plan. I mean,
you gotta have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, they gotta come up with some sort of plan, or else nothing's ever gonna happen.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like the consensus we're getting around the table is that it's just so hard to evaluate this because of the crazy year that we're in right now. I think across the table, we all know, we don't just think, we know that Ohio State is a good team. For me, I think the only way that Ohio State does not make the playoffs is if A&M in their next few games just rips through their opponents and really outscores them, plays phenomenal defense, and Kellen Mond and that offense play phenomenal offense. Or I think this is a more realistic thing. I think in the SEC championship, when Florida will play Alabama, if Florida wins that game and Ohio State's still not getting many games played and they don't really play well in the Big Ten championship, if they even play that game, which now we know that they are allowing Ohio State to play that game, but still COVID still exists, so we'll see what goes on in the future. But if Florida beats Alabama in the SEC championship, which I think, you could say
more
it's a little
possible,
iffy,
and I think people are.
It's definitely possible, of course.
Yeah,
absolutely. But that's really the main pathway I see to Ohio State not getting the playoffs. If that doesn't happen, unless A&M really, really impresses me, unless Cincinnati does something amazing, or Iowa State, who's ranked in front of them right now, I don't really see a shot of Ohio State falling down. That's just me. That's just how I think about it. But everyone thinks about it differently.
Yes.
And the committee, I feel like, thinks about it like me. At least that's the feeling I get.
As we get later on into the college football playoff, announcements where they give their rankings, it's going to be more and more interesting to see. Even if Ohio State wins, are they still going to be good enough to stay in that top 4? Right now they are, but that's the question we're all wondering. And
when they play, they got to play well.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think they will because they're a good team.
And like we mentioned, they don't have a game again this weekend against Michigan, and that's the game where they always look to the beatdown because Michigan struggles against Ohio State. We're not going to know if that was going to change this year, but it's just so unfortunate for Ohio State.
We know it was not going to change.
I mean, there's a chance, but yeah, you're probably right. But it's unfortunate for this team that they're in the conference that they are, in the situation that they are, and it leaves us with more questions wondering, is this team going to even make it to the playoffs? Is the eye test good enough to throw them in there? a lot more questions as well. So we're going to continue to ask these questions as the season goes on. But we want to make a video just talking about our opinions on it right now. So if you guys don't have anything else to say, I'll wrap this up.
I'm good.
One more thing I just want to say. I mean, with Ohio State, control what you can control. Every time you play, make sure you make the most of it. And
Every time you get on the field, make sure you get the most of it.
And I mean, at any time, hey, you could be hanging by a thread, or you could be number 4, very comfortable. But you don't know what goes on inside that committee room. But just we're lucky to have any football in 2020. I know it must be frustrating to see your team be in a position like this, but there's other teams across the country that are having the same problems. So hopefully when you play well, and win the Big Ten championship, and I think they'll at least be in the conversation. But we'll see what happens between now and then.
I think they'll be more than just in the conversation.
All right,
Time
we
will
will
tell.
see what happens. Time will tell is exactly right. So thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel with the notification bell. Comment your opinions down below about this Ohio State team. Are they a playoff team? Are they not? Is the eye test good enough for you, or is it not? We'd love to know all your answers to the questions we've asked, and feel free to ask us questions, and we'll get back to you about that as well. So with all that, we will see you guys later.
See ya.